on how many of these I've done now. And I believe this might be my 18th board presentation as building principal in this district. And I felt like I was starting to get a little bit redundant with maybe some of the stuff that I'd asked people to present. Well, I happened to come across something that I had never seen before. I know there's plenty of people through the district that are using this, but this thing called Seesaw just blew my mind. So I wanted to help blow the board's mind by allowing you guys to see this and the capabilities of this software. So with the help of Beth Zona, Jessica Lynn, Allison Weeks, and Lisa Tolson, we're going to present Seesaw. Who's first?
All right. So in that lovely introduction, I want you to imagine, okay, so you can close your eyes if you want, but I want you to imagine you are teachers. Imagine if you could listen to your students read for 1 minute to check for fluency. Imagine if you can listen to students read sight word lists. Imagine your students listening to them count by fives all the way to 100. Listen to students identifying letters. Doesn't seem unusual, right? Most teachers do that. But imagine that you do all this and you didn't have to pull each child to do this. This is what makes Seesaw so exciting. We all have found a way to achieve this and so much more, utilizing technology in our classroom. So now we're going to introduce to you different parts of Seesaw.
All right, Seesaw can document students' learning in lots and lots of ways. Students can video themselves, they can take pictures, they can upload PDFs and files, they can also import from Google Apps, which is pretty awesome.
So teachers and students are able to see the growth throughout the year from the student by going into their individual folders. So for example, if they want to see the fluency from the beginning of the year, they could go to their folder to see the beginning of the year, compare it to the middle of the year, to the end of the year. And students are also able to access their work and see their growth.
So these things that they do on Seesaw, they are actually uploaded into, they're organized into different files. So when you go in for a second grade, I have two files, a math file folder and a reading file folder. So they actually go in and upload and they put it in the folder. So everything's very neat, it's very teacher friendly, student friendly, and it just makes things so much easier. Oh, me again. So they have two different ways they can access the Seesaw app. They can access it through a QR code, which the kids love to do that. And they can also go through their email or their Google accounts. And Seesaw also works in any grade K through 12.
So at the primary level, we use it in lots of different ways. We have students read short passages and partners tape them reading, and they submit that to us. Students, if they're assigned certain sight words for the week, can read those by themselves and tape themselves. We've had students that have solved math problems and then explained how they solved their math problem through the video portion. And all of these things actually takes no time away from our instructional time. Those are submitted to us and we can watch them at home or wherever we need to, and we haven't lost instructional time by pulling kids one by one to assess those different pieces. Students can also take pictures of their work in centers, that's that accountability piece, and submit that. And also students are, and we've done this a few times, have able to go back into their videos and do a little self-assessing on their fluency or if they've explained something to us. And it's interesting because many times they want to go back and redo because they notice they missed something. So it's a great tool for that also.
Okay, and to piggyback off of what Beth was saying, at the intermediate level, we do use it a lot in our math centers where they can quickly take a picture of what they've done in that center, and then they can erase their work if it's a dry erase, and then they can move on. So we're not constantly losing papers or they don't have their name on it and they don't know whose it is.
we're not dealing with that all the time. So they can quickly upload it. It's real time, so it's there in a matter of seconds. And then we can quickly check it and see which skills we need to target for the next day. And we would like to show you a quick video on the fluency part.
This is passage 4. Alright, are you ready? Yeah, I got you. Get that. Done. Marta was taking her first airplane ride. She sat by the window. She put her seatbelt on tight. I don't think I'll like riding in an airplane, Martha told her dad. After the takeoff, Martha looked down at the ground below. Cars on the road was really...
I think that's it. Yeah. So you can see there too, the students are more engaged. They love to videotape each other. You can see they like to get right in their faces and make sure they're all ready to go. So it's definitely more student engagement there and more accountability because they know that we're going to see it. And if they're goofing around over there, we're going to see that on the video too, which we've come across a little bit. And also, there we go. There is a picture of one of my students who did a math problem and took a picture of it. And then that was in his math center, so it goes right to his folder, and I can check that as soon as I'm home in my PJs, or whenever I decide to, waiting at the doctor's, wherever we need to check papers, it's there for us. And there is a quick link on the bottom, and this is just showing, so one of my kids had made a mini lesson and sent it to another kid on how to take a picture on Seesaw. So we could play that real quick. So as you can see here, there's not a lot of volume to this or audio because he does have his headphones on. So he's listening to his friend show him in this video, because he was absent that day, on how to take a photo on Seesaw. And the best part about this is it doesn't take any time away from anybody else. He can stop it, he can rewind it and go back if he missed something, and he can watch this as many times as he needs to so that he gets it and is able to do it on his own.
So students can video, but teachers can also video. For example, I taught compound sentences a few weeks ago, and I had 3 distinct different groups of students in 3 different places. So I taped 3 different mini lessons, taught them their skill, explained their task. So they went off, they watched their individual lesson at their own pace, they were able to rewind, they could stop. They went off to do their task. Students actually went back and rewatched because they weren't sure of something. So it's very individualized for the students. They were able to work at their own pace, and they're so engaged when they're watching a lesson completely by themselves on their device. So another way to use the Seesaw app.
As teachers, we're always looking for the best apps for our students, and we feel that Seesaw is the best app. It also helps us when we go home at night. For example, the 4 of us will be leaving with an iPad, whereas someone else might be leaving with a bag full of papers to grade. Thank you all for your support.
I would love to ask a couple questions if you don't mind. So I'm not familiar with Seesaw. Is this just in the store? Is there a cost to Seesaw?
No, it is free.
It is free. That's great.
Parts of it do cost
The app that we've been using, the Seesaw app, we're using the free part of it. There's another whole component that has a price to it, which we do not have at this time. And it's connected to standards. It's there's a lot to it.
And that's the one that parents can get and see what their kids are doing.
Yes, they can go on and see what their child's doing during the day. Yeah. Yep.
still get on this one, too. Yep.
Oh, great.
That's part of the free one.
Great.
So
if you want to zoom in, my business manager's face lit up every time you say free. So
I like free too. But no, I did. I got excited hearing about Seesaw, and I love the fact that it was a great presentation, by the way. I love that it's not on the features, it's on the benefits. I heard increased instructional time, and I was telling Mr. Colabufo, and I'm sure the rest of the board does too, but actually reading the stuff he sent us a chart on Bloom's taxonomy, right? And even in watching your presentation, I was seeing that the kids are doing a lot of things on the right side of the chart, which is they're analyzing, teaching back, so that's great. If you're that excited about the free part, is there an interest on the paid part? And if so, I'm not looking to insert ourselves, but I assume you guys are having those discussions, and if it's worthwhile
Well,
for you.
I think at this time, this is my second year using it also with Beth, and we still have a lot to learn with what's in the free, but of course, we would like to expand it and see what else is out there within the Seesaw to be able to implement.
And if I can jump in, that's something that Elaine has been spending a lot of time preparing an audit for all the apps and accounts. A lot of ones, things that we had purchased were never actually being used by people. So what she's doing is really looking at this for an efficiency cost thing, saying, yes, there are so many things that teachers want that we can do because there's a lot of things that nobody's even using that we're paying for, that she's on top of that.
Great. Any other questions from the board?
Yes, sir. Oh, so how does something like this come to fruition? Some teachers get together and they say, oh, have you tried using this app? And, you kind of just vocalize it. I mean,
Well, let me tell you. I can tell you.
Okay.
We've lived it. Every summer, teachers are home. They're doing research. They're looking for apps. They're looking for programs. They're doing whatever they can to always improve what they did from the year before. So over the summer, I'm going on Seesaw. I'm trying out, looking for these writing programs. I mean, Beth and I are like on the phone every day. What do you think about this? Then she's looking on it. What do you think the pros are? What are the cons? And we're just all summer long. That's what we're doing. And then we come up with goals. What's our goal going to be for this year? Our goal is to try to implement this part of it. You know what I mean? And then grow from there. So that's how it usually happens. And then usually somebody hears in the building that one of us is doing it, and then you two ask, hey, can you show me how to do this? And then you have veterans teachers coming up to us, geez, can you show me how to do that? I think that would work really well in my class. So it kind of just spreads.
And it also works not just for the student accountability, but also for the classroom community too, because the kids are able to actually see each other's videos and go in and post positive feedback in there too, which my kids have been doing a great job with. Typing in their fluencies, hey, great job, or slow down a little bit. So giving them something that they need to work on, but in a positive way, has really increased our classroom community a lot.
Okay, and then the other thing I have to administration, excuse me, if Brewerton comes up with something like this, it's only being used here at Brewerton, right?
No. Seesaw is being used in several other elementary buildings.
A.A. Cole uses an awful lot. Many teachers at A.A. Cole I know use it.
And how
Many
is it?
teachers in the
Is it
district that use
once again though? Is it just word of mouth, right? Or is administration sending a newsletter out saying, "Hey, this is a really neat tool, and we really like it. You should try it out."
Connie, go ahead. Your hands up.
On November 13th, Phil, we have somebody doing a presentation during this. Well, not just you those.
Oh, with Seesaw. With some friends.
And I thought maybe it's Lisa and company.
Yes.
Are doing a presentation to any of the teachers that sign up district-wide. So I think we did 2 sessions of 30, so it'll be open to 60 people that way as well. We'll offer it again on April 2nd. So,
But Mr. Buddy brings up a good point. That's something that we're really trying to improve upon, where there's some amazing things happening on like islands. And depending on which teacher and what teacher team decided to do it, where on the other side of that wall, there may be teachers that don't know that that's even there. So we're doing PD, but we put out things, monthly things that elementary teachers can get on, can take a look at. We still have that one Google Doc that's, I think, like 50 pages now. And it's organized to the NYSET rubric, but it's all tools and strategies that teachers keep adding stuff onto. So that could be another place that you guys can, even add that to as well. It's a great sharing source, but that's an excellent point. one other thing before they sit down. So Lori and myself were walking through Brewerton over the summer. We pop in and visit different buildings, and Mrs. Tolson was really excited one of the parts of differentiating is differentiating the learning environment. And that's often kind of overlooked because people say, well, we're all in this one room. What can we really do? But she was so excited with a couple of the other teachers to show us how they differentiated it. And so what they did was they had, through their great PTO, they had went and purchased stand-up desks because some of the students like to stand up during the day. They had those kind of, it's kind of like the workout ball, but with a fabric on it so the kids don't slide off. They had traditional desks, and then, what was it, like the first week of school, you had the kids go in the hallway and then come in, and they just lit up. And now when I come into those classrooms, you could just see how it impacts their work. The one boy that's standing up just seems to be better standing up doing the work at a stand-up desk than seated. And if you go to any companies, they have that. My buddy owns a company, Terrakeet, downtown, search engine optimization. Is that a plug that I just did? And some people are seated, some people are standing up. So that's the way we're preparing them for the real world. And I just didn't want you to sit down without giving you that shout out. Great job.
With that comment, for the average Joe walking into a classroom, would it appear more chaotic?
What do you think, Mr. Bowden?
Yeah, I think if you're used
That was not a facetious question. That was not a.
If you're used to rows and columns, quiet, do this work.
Right. Some standing up, some sitting on a ball, some kneeling.
It's much more chaotic, yes. But it's
That's not a good word.
Chaos isn't a good word.
Okay.
It's busier.
Okay.
Busier.
More engaged.
And I would touch upon what she says, more engaged, because we had an opportunity to come back, and the student that chose to stand up is probably going to be less fidgety because he has the opportunity to stand up.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't mean, that was not a trick question. I was just, I'll come in and see it so I can get myself. But
But what's interesting is that you would think as a teacher trying to do this, and have never done it before, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be crazy. Everybody's going to be fighting over these certain seats and this and that. But that wasn't the case at all. And then once the kids have tried out different seats, they know what works best for them with what activity they're doing. Like I'll say, do you think that's the best chair for you for this activity? You know what I mean? And they'll know, and they'll say, oh, I don't think this is the best spot for me. I'm going to go sit over here. So they have really trained themselves. And those kids know that they don't do well on the yoga ball, and they're better off sitting in a regular seat, or they're better off standing. So it's not chaotic at all. It's the kids are actually have an opportunity to figure out what's the best seating for me. You know what I mean? By trying different things, which normally you would not be able to. Everybody's stuck sitting in the regular chairs.
Okay. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask one other question?
Yeah,
Not on
absolutely.
the presentation. Brett, what is behind you? I couldn't help but notice. Is that going to be filled out throughout the year, or?
That's a great question. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
The next presentation we have, we're very excited about this, and my little lead up to it is the fact that I'd like to think that it came directly from the board, and a comment that Theo Burtis, who was sitting in Reagan Parada's spot last year when they talked about the need for mental health in the district, and the board knew right away that there was a need not only in this school district but also in our region, but really in our county for mental health. So I don't want to take any of their thunder, so I'd like to introduce business teacher Nicole Heath from Paul V. Moore and Jen DiBianco, who is our Director of Student Support Services and Interventions.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us this evening. We're here to propose something we think that is really a necessary thing that would benefit our students in our district. It's a mental health task force. And I'll just give you a little background of what brought me here, and then I'll let Jen do the same thing. Last spring, I was approached by my high school principal and asked if I wanted to serve on the Oswego County Suicide Prevention Coalition. And so with that, I was offered a training to go to over the summer. So I did that half-day training. And so with that learned, I mean, this was very new topic for me to learn about. So I was able to learn some information. And then towards the end of the summer, I gone into time to talk a little bit about what was happening and what our future goals were regarding this topic. And lo and behold, simultaneously, they were talking about hiring Jen, which works out very well for this. So I approached Jen when I first got to school and told her a little bit about the coalition, and she joined as well. I don't know if you want to give a little background.
Hi. I started September 1st, and my background is school social work and also school administration. And when I first started, Nicole did tell me about the Suicide Coalition, and I went to my first meeting. And I was amazed at the various community resources that were available. And in addition, there was just so many questions that I think that I had and Nicole had, and we were bringing certain things up to Mr. Calabufo in terms of how can we best help our students? What is some of our liability? How can we continue to support the different resources when financially things sometimes are really tough? So we came up with a plan to propose to you a mental health task force, which came out of the Suicide Coalition, but we thought that mental health task force sounded a lot more positive than calling it a suicide coalition, which is what the guidebook, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, initially recommended.
Okay, great. So what we thought we would do first is just provide some statistics to you to help support what we're recommending. And I know you can read, but I'll just highlight a few of these things up here. So we first want to talk about mental health issues and how common they are. And I think a lot of us recognize it, but sometimes when we see this data right in our face, it's really important for us to really sit and consider and decide what we want to do about it. So 1 in 5 adolescent children experience one or more mental health issue, and that's huge in itself. And 50% of all cases are occurring by the age of 14. And so what are we doing to help our students when we see so many? 20% is a huge number. And the median age of onset for anxiety is 11 years old. That statistic was surprising to me to see at such a young age. The typical onset of depression is during early adolescence. And during 2015, 3 million teens between 12 and 17 had at least one episode of depression, and 6.3 million teens between age 12 and 17 experienced anxiety. So these are statistics we're looking at specifically for mental health, and this next slide takes a look at how does that relate to risk of suicide. Many of you may already know this, but it's the third leading cause of death among young people, ages 15 to 24. High suicide rates are actually listed in the summary of health challenges provided by the Oswego County Health Department as part of their community health assessment. So seeing that right on the health assessment, I think, is critical for us to be looking at, especially for this area, and that our suicide death rate is higher than our state average, and higher by a lot. So we know that there's research to support this correlation between mental health and then risk of suicide. We know suicide has touched our district, and we know we want to do, when something happens, we all want to get behind it, but I think we might be missing this piece that will kind of pull the district together in one plan moving forward.
I tried to get the most recent stats, and it was 61 people in the last 3 years in Oswego County, which is quite high.
Well, and I will say, because I don't know if you have it on here, but Chris Todd just shared with us that Oswego County is the #1 county in the state for suicide.
Oswego and Jefferson, from our research.
So this just gives some information about risk factors related to suicide. And in that second bullet, it's just saying that it encompasses biological, psychological, and other social factors. And specifically, when we look at our students, personal characteristics that might impact a student being more at risk, low self-esteem, risk-taking behavior, engaging in, and we know that at this age group, that is obviously something that we have to consider. Social isolation is another piece, as well as adverse and stressful life events, and we know that as young adults, sometimes what they perceive as stressful might not be what we think as extremely stressful, but it can be anything from a bullying situation to performing not well on a test, you know. So those kind of things are what we want to look at and see what can we do as a district to help with. So.
You know, some other things too in terms of risk factors, major depression, which comes up a lot, and the anxiety that Nicole talked about, alcohol and drug use, which again we're seeing more and more, some confusion sometimes about reality, what reality really is. And some of our students are having trouble with the law, juvenile justice system. So that's some other really large risk factors. The following are challenges to prevention and treatment of mental health issues. One of these is living in a rural area or being geographically isolated. Again, lots of times when I am making referrals to families, you hear lots of different barriers. Maybe their car is broken, it's not on a bus line, they're isolated. Being impoverished, so poverty actually obviously comes into play here, and lacking access to physicians or mental health providers. Many times there's a long waiting list. So as much as we have plenty of referrals, sometimes it takes months for them to see someone available or that they have access to right away. The evidence that we've collected in this short amount of time really supports the need for a response by our school district, and we're hoping that we have that support. We'd like to get community members involved and school district leaders and law enforcement and anyone that could support us. Access to school-based mental health services and supports directly improves physical and psychological safety for students. It helps their academic performances, cognitive performances, and also just their social, emotional development and how they're doing in terms of friendships, in terms of connections with teachers. All that's very important. So our proposal is that we implement a district-wide mental health task force. The purpose of our task force obviously is ultimately to protect our children in the community and well-being of all the students. So we're talking K through 12. And that's why we think it's a district model versus just having it at just the elementary or just the high school. And we'd like procedures in place to prevent, access the risk of, intervene, respond to mental health issues. We did talk about obviously suicide, but just mental health issues in general. And all those procedures and policies that go into place that sometimes you just don't think about until something happens. Some of our recommendations that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention gave us that we were looking for that we found in this task force is that the coalition that we formed, the task force, would have administrators and parents and board members and mental health professionals and representatives from all the different community programs available. And we want, obviously, people with expertise in youth mental health, and eventually, possibly students as well that could give great feedback for us. So the purpose is, protocol and forming policies and forming procedures and identifying services so that we can provide referrals and so that we can see what community agencies maybe we do need to form and how we go about doing that. So we obviously both have this vision and, part of it is just recognizing the physical and behavioral and mental health. And we know that students need protective factors. Some of the protective factors are problem-solving skills and religion and mental health care and positive connections. And that's integral. We recognize that suicide is a leading cause of death among young people. We recognize that there's an ethical responsibility by all of us to take a proactive approach in fostering wellness. And we need to just acknowledge that the school has a role and all of the community members have a role in providing this environment that's safe, that fosters youth development, and that places students at a lower risk for mental health issues and suicide in general.
Just as a teacher coming into this and being trained for the first time this summer. I think sometimes we're at a loss of what to do, or what we should be recognizing, or when we should speak up or not speak up. Sometimes we're unwilling to say something because we're afraid that we might initiate or hurt someone's feelings by saying something, or just not get the response we want. And I think something like this, where we could put some procedures in place, and also train everybody in the district, not just the teachers, but the TAs, the bus drivers, custodians, anybody in contact with students, so they're able to, identify risk factors. And we also have some procedures in place. What do we do next? What do we say? Where do we go? So.
In closing, I just wanted to read something that came from SAMHSA. Schools have special reasons for taking action to help prevent the tragedy of suicide or mental health issues. A student's mental health can affect their academic performance. Depression and other brain conditions can interfere with the ability to learn, which is why we're all here. Maintaining a safe environment is part of a school's overall mission, and student suicides can significantly impact other students and the entire school community. Knowing what to do following a suicide is critical to helping students cope. And it goes on to say that, we need certain toolkits that we can all use so we can help, solve problems together.
If I could just jump in, so I could just give the audience and the board, but I'm sure you're already aware of this, Jeff King does an awesome job, as well as his administrative staff at the high school and the teachers. And I know this goes on in the other buildings as well. I could just definitely say, I know in the high school, because Jeff always lets me know every time that they have a police officer coming, if there's a student that's really in a bad spot and they're talking about hurting themselves, Jeff and his team always take that extremely serious, and we bring in the people, the trained professionals, to be able to handle those extreme situations. City BOCES gave a phenomenal presentation. Roseanne Bain, and really it was the Central New York Onondaga School Boards, I believe that it was. But it was Onondaga that did it. And it was amazing. And we had 9 administrators that were there from the district, and then 3 board members that went to this Monday night out there. And that was great, because we recognize that there's a huge issue countywide. And we're doing everything we can. So I'm really, really excited about this. We're clearly going to do it. I've already brought it up to the board before about board involvement of being on the committee as well.
Thank you, ladies, for the presentation. And this has been a long time coming. My middle daughter suffers with bipolar disorder, and she had a learning disability through, from the time she was in 2nd grade, she was identified with an IEP. She had an IEP. But I could go, nobody knew how to deal with what I was dealing with. And finally, I worked for hematology oncology, because I do medical billing and so on. And they had free counseling for their employees. And this went on until she finally got the help she needed when she was 19. So all through her school career could have been much more positive had people known and how to handle some of this stuff. And I would definitely like to be considered for that panel. Thank you.
We're doing a presentation for the staff at our Professional Development Day next Monday, and the session's filled immediately, and I've been receiving emails about the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I think it demonstrates that people
yeah.
They want to know more.
People care, but they don't know how to help sometimes.
Right, and I know, through all the, I'm still reading, and, and that they are now finding that there are a lot of children, 7 and 8 years old, that are being identified with bipolar disorder.
I mean, when we first approached and we were looking at this, and people kind of questioned at the elementary level.
Yeah.
It's like, certainly.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, great presentations. So I think it's great that the presentation the night that we went to at the school board meeting, it's an identified goal, and Mr. Colabufo's goal that the board accepted. And I just want to say one of the numbers that stood out to me in your presentation, and I'm a numbers guy, so I like to put it in a different way. You hear 1 in 5 students between 13 and 18 facing at least one or more mental health issue. I think it's impactful to think that in our middle school and high school, that means that for argument's sake, 350 of our middle school and high school students, by the time they leave us, are going to face at least one mental health issue. I mean, it's a staggering thought to think about for a second. So, so Pearl, if you could, for our next meeting under unfinished business, the mental health task force, any board member that's interested in participating, and I don't even know that we know all the guidelines, whether you want 1, 2, whatever it is, but if you're interested, let me know, and then at the next board meeting, we'll make sure to follow up and, give you the name so that we're on board. All right? Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right. Thank you for your presentation. All right. With that, we're going to move on to our open forum for our community portion, and I just need to read this one. We do have one blue card tonight. The Board of Education encourages public participation on school-related matters at board meetings. Persons wishing to address the board shall advise the board president or the superintendent of schools prior to the scheduled starting of the meeting by submitting a blue card to the district clerk. Persons making presentations at a board meeting will address the remarks to the board president and may direct questions or comments to the board members or other district officials upon approval of the president. Presentation should be kept to 2 minutes. Board members and the superintendent shall have the privilege of asking questions of any person who addresses the board. We do have one card from Mr. Jeff Choquette this evening, who would like to make some comments on smart schools.
Hi, thank you, Board, for your time tonight. I just wanted to say I'm actually a member. I live in Central Square. Both of my girls attended Central Square. I've got 2 in Oswego right now. My oldest graduated 5th in her class, and the other one was in the high 90s the whole time, and so I'm proud of both of them. I'm also coming before you as an employee of Dell Computers as well. And all I really was here for was, my girls were going to school, one of the things that I noticed was there was really a lack of technology in the schools. And I really did, to me, I really started to notice it when I would go to the auditoriums. You start to see the lack of wireless, the lack of just the tools that you would expect kids to be able to have today in order to be successful. And so, although on the one hand, this may sound self-serving because I work for Dell and I'm the account executive that covers K-12 for CNY RIC and MORIC, the truth is I am also concerned as a taxpayer that the funds are going to the right places. I had conversations with Jack Monica when he was here, and to me it seemed like a shame that he was buying used computers. He was buying stuff 3 and 4 years old when other schools are getting rid of things, okay? And I guess the one thing that I wanted to make note of is that I took a look at the Smart School proposal that was submitted, I guess, back in February. I'm sure there were probably revisions to it along the way. And just in looking at some of the pricing and the quantities, I was looking at orders of magnitude of out of $1 million worth of Chromebooks, and I know at the end of the day you put in numbers that are higher probably than hopefully you're going to need to spend, but just with the numbers that we're giving to other school districts, we could say probably close to $280,000 just on the Chromebooks alone. Now, I know that not every Chromebook's the same, that some have more memory, some have more disk and all that. All I'm looking for is an opportunity to get in front of the school district to be able to put together what we have available. And at the end of the day, if it turns out that someone's got a better price and a better product for the district, great. Because at the end of the day, it's really what's about getting the most into the kids' hands. So that's all I had to say.
No, and I can respond to that, and I thank you for coming. I would love for you to, come. You can sit down with Arena and myself. The number didn't also include warranties and other things that were also rolled into that. So it's not just looking at it saying, okay, this was a $200 device. It was all the other things and the trainings that come into that. But I would absolutely love to be able to sit down when Arena is free and when you're free, because I'm always looking to be able to save money.
That would be great.
We can share numbers and things like that. And again, you got a vested interest, your kids in the district.
Right.
Yeah.
And my kids have graduated, so now I'm beyond, but I still love Central Square. I love the community, and I want to see what's best for the kids of this community.
Sure.
So, thank you.
You got it.
Thank you, Mr. Choquette. All right, and with that, that closes our community forum. I will point out that we have 2 executive sessions this evening. We have one at the beginning and one that will come later. So I make a motion that the Central Square School District Board of Education hereby move into executive session to discuss the sale or lease of property with no action to follow. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wood. Any discussion? All right, great. We will return to wrap up our meeting, but there will be no action from this executive session. So can I get all those in favor? It is unanimous.